This is Eric Rutan of Cannibal Corpse. You are listening to the Scars and Guitars podcast with Andrew McKay Smith.
G'day everybody, I hope you are well. I've got a chat with Serena from the group Svalbard to share with you. Now the catalyst for our introduction is due to an Australian tour which is happening this week and next, so late May 2024. It's happening across Australia. Check gig guides, of course I will put a link in the episode description if you are local and are keen. Now this is one of those episodes where it's a chat. If you're new to what it is that I do, I don't conduct interviews. There's no point. There are too many other podcasts out there that do the Quanda style thing and that are overly zealous and are very earnest in the way that they talk up albums and tours, and I just don't give enough of a shit. Okay? And it's my show. I can do what I want, frankly. And I choose to have conversations. It is the point of difference. And whether we talk about politics, which happens often, current affairs, social, all sorts of social events and adjacent, or we talk Australian marine, killer wildlife, or roller coasters. The conversations go wherever they go. You know, in this one here, I'm a bit powered by coffee because it's early in the morning, and in Serena's case, it's late at night at the end of a very long... Actually, I can tell you she's been doing a bunch of interviews because there's been many opportunities to talk to her, and I took one. So there you go. If you feel like sending the hate mail and saying words to the effect of, I don't want to fucking hear from you, I listen to her and all that bullshit, don't bother. You know what? As Ricky Gervais said, we're all going to die at some point, so just enjoy fucking life. That said, this is a good one. It's very informal. If you're up for a bit of fun, this is one of those episodes. So here she is, Serena from Svalbard.
Hello.
A good morning from me to a good afternoon to you. Or good evening, I think it is, isn't it?
It is. It's 11:30 at night. What time is it over there?
My God. And then John's got the whip out, has he, insofar as asking you to bloody talk to us at 11:30 at night?
It's okay. I gave him a list of available times and I said up until midnight, so here we are.
It's John's a good bloke, by the way. I say that all in jest. He's a good mate. But look, it's 8:30 in the morning here. So, I've been doing this for long enough to have seen the transition from phones to Skype and now Zoom. And it never fails to amaze me that you can be in the UK and I can be in Australia here and we can talk to each other like as if we're sitting across from each other in our living rooms.
Yeah, when you put it like that, it is pretty amazing, isn't it?
It's crazy. It's just nuts. I just remember, you know, I'm not an old man. I'm not suggesting for a moment, but there wasn't even access to the internet when I was at school because I'm 46. And I just see how quickly things have evolved and got kids these days and how the digital integration into their lives is so pervasive at this point. We could never have imagined that in the analog existence that we had through the 80s and most of the 90s.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah, it's pretty crazy to think.
Crazy stuff, but it does give you an opportunity to do a lot of interviews and a lot of connections with people across the globe, as it does give me an opportunity to share these conversations across the globe as well. So I am thankful for that. And we are connected because you got an Australian tour, which I believe is your first.
It is indeed, yeah. First time in Australia. I'm really, really excited. Can't wait to get out there.
Surely you've got relatives out here or something like that, though. Surely you've got something.
No. No, I don't. All my relatives are like German, of German descent. So
okay. Yeah.
No one on the Australian side of things. Yeah.
There you go. Yeah. Well, I think you've done a lot of interviews at this point. So what are some of the common questions that have come up? You know, you always get that, what are you looking forward to when you come to Australia? I know you always get that, but what are some of the most common questions and the answers that you're given to them? Oh, can you hear me?
Yeah, sorry, you just froze for a second then. I mean, that is the most common question has been what I'm looking forward to about coming to Australia. And my answer is, I mean, just seeing the scene, experiencing like what the crowds are like over there, getting the bands that we're getting to play with, really excited to check them out. I'm excited to go to Luna Park in Sydney and ride some roller coasters because I am also a roller coaster enthusiast. So that's going to be fun. Excited to hopefully go to an animal park and meet a koala and meet some new critters. Those are just to see the country, really, see what it's all about. I've never been there like personally on a holiday either, so it's all going to be new to me, which is very exciting. In terms of other questions, it's usually well, the conversation has always drifted back to the spiders because I'm quite concerned about that. So I've spoken a lot about the spiders.
You just get used to them after a little while. I walk at night with the dog because he's a bit old these days, and you just bump into a web and you learn that basically if they're in the air, they're not venomous. Okay, it's the ones on the ground under logs that are. So there's your tip. Hey, can you hear me? Sorry, I must have frozen again.
Sorry, you've cut out.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, it just froze again. But I did capture. Yes, yeah.
Yeah. So it's the ones that are on make webs that you bump into. So the most common ones, actually, almost every single spider you'll bump into, will make a web because you're walking through a pathway or what have you. They won't do anything to you, even if they get on you. They're way more. Actually, all spiders are way more scared of you, except for one, and I'll get to that one. All the ones that are on the ground do have a bit of venom or can nip you a little bit. If you're in Sydney and they do take you up to the Blue Mountains or surrounds where there's a lot of sandstone, exposed sandstone, you will likely be in the vicinity of a funnel web spider. Now, that is the most venomous spider in the world. That is a absolute bastard of a thing, that thing. But you've really got to go looking for it. It's not like you're going to, go into your hotel room and find one underneath your pillow, if you know what I'm saying.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Well, I mean, I'm going to be steering as clear as possible from any spider zones. It's the huntsmen that worry me. Like if it's a venomous one, that's it is what it is. But the huntsman, it's the how quick they are and how big they are. That's they're very very alien-esque, I think, in their movement.
Yeah, we consider them good luck in our household because they keep the insect population down because they're an apex animal. So when you see them around your house, you've actually got a healthy ecosystem.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Different way of looking at it. I know they're terrifying to look at, believe me, but I'm not suggesting to do this, but the first time you let one walk on you or something like that is the freakiest thing you'll probably do. But they when they say they nip you, it just feels like as though they're walking and grabbing onto you a little bit. And they don't bite, in my experience anyway. You really have to sort of go out of your way to force them to do anything like that. They're quite harmless. Really, it's in Australia though. The spiders are one thing. It's what happens to you when you get in the water is the big problem. Because,
what do you mean?
Well, even the waves are trying to kill you here. So, I'm on the Gold Coast, so I'm used to growing up between Sydney and the Gold Coast. I'm used to growing up around water. Now, there's things called rips. If you've heard of any of this stuff, step in and tell me to talk about something else. But rips, you can't see them. We as Australians who are used to going to the beach, we see them, but we see tourists every year go in outside of the red and yellow flags into the water and they get sucked out and they drown. Or they don't. They actually don't drown because the lifesavers, the lifeguards do a tremendous job. But you see it in particular with a lot of Chinese nationals. You see it all the time down in Sydney and on the Gold Coast. On the Gold Coast beaches, and you just say, for God's sake, swim between the flags because the water is lethal. On the Sunshine Coast where I used to live, I used to go for morning swims. Now, I knew where to go because I could pick the lay of the land with the water and see where the rips were. But you see these country people from up north and the far west or what have you, and you can always sort of tell country people they've got that vibe about them, if you know what I mean. And they, we're a happy family, we're going into the water, and like, no, don't do that. Don't do that because it's extremely dangerous and you get sucked in. So I know I'm painting a really bleak picture of what it's like to go swimming on the beach here in Australia, but there's just places to go and places not to go. And we figured it out. If you go to the beach, swim in between the flags, don't swim outside of them. Don't even swim in the proximity of them because they're laser focused on what goes on, the lifeguards, in between what happens in the flags. But surfers are a different story because they're made of other stuff. and they go right out. They have to go outside of the flags. But for regular swimmers, particularly if you're a tourist, just stick in the flags and you see in between the flags, you'll be okay. And of course, I haven't even started to talk about the jellyfish or the sharks, because I'm in Queensland, and once you get up above, it's about Serena or Mackay, so the Tropic of Capricorn. Once you get up above that, just don't even bother going into the bloody water. There's no point.
Wow, okay,
There's just
that's
something
good
in
to
there.
know.
There's either
Oh,
water snakes or crocodiles. The big one is crocodiles.
oh, okay.
So Darwin, from the Tropic of Capricorn north, I don't know whether it's the same in Western Australia. Actually, I'm pretty sure it's not, but on the eastern coast, right up above the Gulf of Carpentaria, so the big spike you see at the top of Queensland near Papua New Guinea, certainly over to Darwin. If you're travelling to Darwin, which I don't think you are, but just in case there's a stop off in the near future there's you can't go into the water there anywhere except for where it's been designated. But you see, to be honest, you see Oz in Cairns, and they got signs up because the British tourists get drunk and they jump into the water, which is all well and good if you're in Sydney, but not if you're in Cairns, because they've got signs up that literally say, we will not jump in and save you if you jump into the water because it's a risk to everybody else's life. And it's stopped now, but in decades gone by, there was always somebody that got bitten. When I say got bitten, they're killed. And it's a hell of a way to go.
Oh my God.
It's a hell of a way to go. Yeah. Yeah. I know. Look, most Australians, I can talk about this stuff because I've travelled far and wide and I've worked in the regions, and I'm from Queensland. And look, when you talk to someone from Sydney and Melbourne, they're probably going to have no clue, to be honest with you, because they're about as urban as what someone from metropolitan London is. Okay. But when you get outside of the region, when you get outside of the bloody cities, which are just their own bubble, really, and I've got to say it, you experience real Australia in inverted commas. The Australia that you see in the documentaries and the like, then you'll start to experience some of this stuff. So I hope whoever Destroy All Lions has paired you with is actually going to give you that opportunity.
I think so the schedule is pretty tight. I'm not sure how much of exploring between cities we're going to get to do, because it is back-to-back shows, flying between every shows. I know Liam, our guitarist / the other vocalist, it's his birthday when we're out there. So he's going to stay for a couple of extra days and do some more exploring after we fly home. So he's going to get to see a lot more of it than we will.
Yeah, you mentioned you like roller coasters too. Just if they can, in and amongst a tight schedule. I'm on the Gold Coast, and we are the tourist destination in Queensland for things like theme parks. And it's like literally 10 kilometres away from me here, one of the biggest theme park in the country. So if you like roller coasters, that's where to go. Movie World. Yeah. It's got Movie World, Dream World, and all of that stuff. See, Luna Park, to be honest with you, is a bit shit, but whatever. If you go to Dream World, even that compared to the Six Flags things in the US is tiny. But, the Six Flags things have like 20 roller coasters in a row. But for us in the Pacific, Southeast Asia or whatever, that's about the biggest one you'll come across. So it's certainly worth it if you enjoy doing those sorts of things.
Yeah, I mean, I'd love to go to Warner Brothers and ride DC Rivals Hypercoaster, but I don't think I think it's really out of the way for us, sadly. So with Luna Park, I know it's obviously not got the biggest or best rides there, but that's one where I'm like, okay, we're in Sydney, we're going to be close by. I can definitely do that. So I'm keeping my expectations to that sort of thing. But I would love, to come back as a tourist and do the Gold Coast and visit those parks, because they look great.
I think you'd enjoy it. There's so many British people around these days too that what happens is, and I've spoken to enough to understand this, is that depending on what age you are, so I'm not going to assume anything about your age, but if you're still in your 20s, and I'm no doubt you are, by the way, but I'm just saying, when you're in your 20s, you come here and you don't want to leave. That's what's being told me, because it's so similar to Britain, but it's different enough with the climate and other things that you go, wow, there's enough similarities here that I feel like I'm at home for the most part, even though I'm thousands of kilometres away, but I've still got all of these advantages, like no bloody more grey skies.
I'm just very, very flattered that you think I'm in my 20s. Thank you very much. That's made my day.
Well, there you go. Never assume a lady's age, that's for sure. And if in doubt, not that I needed to, I genuinely thought you were in your 20s. So there you go.
Thank you.
Mm. What are we going to talk about next? Okay, so we did have a chat a couple of years ago. I feel like it was that. It was probably only 12 months ago or so where we were talking about the weight of the mask, and it hadn't been released yet. So there's two conversations to have. There's the one you have when you're not sure about how it's going to be received, and now it's been out for a year and a half or probably longer. Can't recall, but did it meet your expectations in terms of the way it was received?
The way that the weight of the mask has been received has gone above and beyond what I ever could have dreamed of how people would have received it. In terms of just, the fan reaction to the music, the lyrics, even things like we just got nominated for a Heavy Music Award for Best Album Artwork. So it feels like every little aspect of the album is really getting its moment to shine, which is a fantastic feeling. It still doesn't feel real. The album entered the UK rock chart, the official chart. What? That's just, it's been absolutely crazy, to be honest with you. And what really blew me away was after we'd released the album, we did our first headline tour around Europe. It wasn't that long after we'd released the album and people already knew the words to the new songs, which, it's just, the level of enthusiasm that has met this release has just blown me away, to be honest.
Yeah, it's a good album. It's a great album, as a matter of fact, and it made a number of top 10 lists last year, as I'm sure you saw. So, and you've done. I've checked it out because you've done. It's great that you've been on the front foot about this. I think some bands feel like you've got to earn the right to get into the music as a standalone entity. But I appreciate that you've been on the front foot about this, and you've done a lot of interviews and a lot of fan interactions. But that's the point I want to talk about for a moment. Fan interactions and some of the feedback you've had from fans. It's one thing to get feedback from journalists, but what have fans been saying to you?
So we've actually had, for me personally, as the lyricist of the band, I have some really intense chats with fans, both on our social media pages or coming up to me at the merch desk after shows, talking about what the lyrics mean to them, because, obviously the entire album is sort of about dealing with depression and mental illness in a very kind of open and starkly honest way. I've had a lot of fans approach me and talk about, how those words resonated with them, how they sort of got them through a dark time, and just being able to listen to what they have to say about their experiences and how a song has helped them through. It just it means everything to me. It gives my pain a purpose. If I can take that and create a song that then helps someone else, then that's all anyone can really ask for, isn't it? So it's been very meaningful, the fan reception to the album. It's definitely gone a little bit deeper just than I like the riffs or whatever, which we get that too. I like that too.
I like the video clips actually as well. One of the more recent ones that I saw, whose name right now escapes me, but it felt like as though you were blending in some more of the modern Taylor Swift elements that I see in her videos. You know the one I'm talking about, where you're on a train, I think, as well as in a bedroom as well, and you've got some very funny, cutesy elements, and I like the juxtaposition between the two. So you're doing something different on that front.
So that video is from our third album. That's a slightly older video, I believe. Silent Restraint. With the bedroom, the dancing in the bedroom. That video was the result of lockdown because we couldn't get together and film a normal video. So we just filmed a bunch of stuff in our rooms and got fans to send in stuff and compiled it all together. And it's weird watching that video now because it definitely feels like a time capsule of that period where we couldn't really go outside or do anything.
Yeah. Hey, just talking about the lyrical themes across the album, is that born out of any personal experience?
Yeah, so I mean, the album is about my experience with depression, and like that kind of the never-ending battle that comes with it. You can have good days and bad days, but I wanted to sort of just address the reality of it, because I feel like even though we've improved discussion of mental health significantly in the last sort of 10 years, there's still kind of areas that aren't really sort of, we talk about mental health, but we don't talk about mental illness. And I wanted to represent what a bad day is like, what a dark day is like, so that people can just learn to accept it and to understand what that feels like.
Have you tried any psychedelics to maybe help at all, or has it helped if you've tried them?
No, so I'm very boring. I don't even drink alcohol. I've never tried drugs. I am like the most boring person. Like, you'd see me in a band covered in tattoos, and I think, people will probably assume that that also came hand in hand with it, but it's quite the opposite with me. I very intoxication isn't something that really has been part of my lifestyle.
Mm. Ayahuasca is probably better described as plant technology or plant medicine rather than the psychedelics. And I understand that LSD is created in a lab, and ayahuasca is very different, and it will take you on a bit of a journey. And if your intention is to leave a lot of some of those experiences and feelings behind, you can actually do it with it. If ever the opportunity is offered to you, go for it.
Really? I mean, I think personally for me, I think I'd be too scared to try something like that. But I appreciate the recommendation.
What's next for the band then, or what do you hope is next?
We've got so after we get back from Australia, we've got European festivals coming up. Playing some for the first time, like Brutal Assault in the Czech Republic, which I'm really looking forward to. We'll be hitting up Romania for the first time at Rockstar Extreme Festival. So yeah, there's a lot of good metal festivals to look forward to. Festival season's always one of my favourites anyway, because I love that you get to go to festivals I would go to as a fan anyway and see bands that I love, and get to sit next to them in the catering area. Like, it's great. It's, it's really, really fun. And then we have a month-long tour all across Europe with Alcest at the end of this year. And then, we'll be probably looking at starting to work on new material after that, I think. But yeah, we do have lots to look forward to at the moment in Svalbard.
Have you become mates with any of the bands that you looked up to or were inspired by through sitting next to them and catering?
Yeah, there's been a few. There has been a few where you just sort of strike up a conversation, and then you end up, like building a friendship. Or a lot of it actually comes from tour, because I think touring is when you really get to know people, and being able to tour with bands like Russian Circles and Cult of Luna, Wayfarer and Enslaved. And they're like some of my favorite bands, and you see them every day and you get to know them and you get to understand each other's sense of humor, and you all add each other on socials, and it's great. Like, come away from a tour with 20 new friends. Brilliant.
So what's been the most unexpected thing that's happened for you in this whole journey?
Oh, that's a good question. Um, hmm. That requires quite a bit of thought. I think one of the things that's always amazing to me is when bands that I've loved, that have been huge musical influences on me, have listened to Svalbard and like it. Like, that's absolutely crazy to me. Even if we go back, like one of the first metal albums I ever had was Obsolete by Fear Factory.
Mm-hmm.
And then just last year, Dino Cazares is singing the praises of our new album. I didn't even know he was aware of us. And then I ended up performing guest vocals for Edge Crusher when they were in town in London. And I mean, if you could tell teenage Serena that she'd be doing that. Like, it's absolutely crazy. So I think that's quite unexpected for me to think of, like, my musical heroes even being aware of my band is pretty wild, to be honest.
Mm. So transversely, what's been the greatest challenge that you feel you've had to overcome?
My self-confidence. Believe it or not, I don't have a lot of self-confidence, and there's times where I'm on tour where I'm really sort of battling against voices in my head that are saying I'm not good enough and I'm not good enough to be there, and that I'm, got the imposter syndrome big time because I'm a self-taught guitarist, and so how I approach things musically is a little bit differently to someone with great knowledge of musical theory. I think it's quite easy to when you're in a band and it starts to get recognized and it starts to have a fan base, to internalize all of that as extra pressure. And if you are not a particularly confident person, you start to think of all the ways you're going to let people down and the ways you're not going to live up to that. So learning how to deal with that has been quite a challenge, just learning how to sort of quiet those voices in my head that tell me I don't deserve to be there.
Wow. Yeah. It's always the ones that can do it that have those feelings and thoughts. I have noted that over the decades. It's always the ones that do it that feel that sense of imposter syndrome. And there's something in it because there's a lot of frauds out there. I'm not just talking about music. I'm talking any job you do. Everybody's got a middle manager somewhere who's just a piece of shit and turns up and doesn't have the qualifications but likes ordering people around and pointing fingers and running around the office with a bit of white paper in their hand or what have you. And they've got all the confidence in the world somehow. Yet you're telling me, standing up there on stages singing to tens of thousands of people, collectively, or hundreds of thousands of people collectively speaking, that you feel that way. And there's something in that. There's some esoteric substance to that.
Oh, for sure. It's kind of crazy to think, isn't it?
Maybe it's necessary. It's a paradox, but maybe it's necessary because I feel it sometimes too, because I'm a muso as well. And I play in front of 20 people on Saturday nights playing covers. So I'm not suggesting it's anywhere near the level that you're doing it, but you keep on getting booked and you think, okay, well, we're doing something right. Because at some point you think, well, it's all going to stop because some other band's going to come along and they're going to say, why don't you do it more like them? Because dickhead agents say things like that. But it hasn't happened in years. And maybe they're just happy to have bands after COVID smashed everything apart. But anyway, I've just noticed that there's that paradoxical element to those that can and those that really can't. But the confidence seems to be imbued in all of the ones, and not all, but generalizing. But you know what I mean. Work with me here.
Oh, I definitely know what you mean. And I have definitely experienced working in day jobs with people like that.
They're horrific. They are absolutely horrific. And God help us, I don't know where they get their get up and go from, and their chatterboxes. They keep talking in meetings and stuff, and you're like, can you just stop talking so I can get out of the meeting and get back to our job? It's piling up whilst I'm in here listening to you prattle on about something which isn't important or related to what we even do here.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, I feel your pain.
The question about being a woman in metal. Okay, I haven't listened to you be asked the question, but I have listened to quite a few ladies in metal get asked this question. What's it like being a woman in metal, or adjacent questions, analog questions? Do you still get them?
Yes, yeah. People do still ask me about my experience being a woman in metal, and I think it comes from a different point than it feels like the question comes from a different place when you compare to how it felt when I was asked that at the start of the band 10 years ago. When people used to ask me that many, many years ago, it felt like a novelty thing. Ooh, what's it like? Because it's so unusual. Now it seems to be more of a kind of, let's talk about women in metal. Let's talk about the rise of women in metal. Let's acknowledge that we've got so many fantastic up and coming women in bands, and let's sort of celebrate that. It definitely feels like it comes from a different place. There are differences. Like, I'm not going to sit here and tell you there aren't. Like, when you're all backstage and there's one shower backstage, and the guys they're just not as tidy and clean, and you have to get in that shower after however many guys have used it. Let me tell you, it's just one of those things. Maybe, I mean, that could just be a cleanly person thing rather than a woman thing. But there are going to be differences. There's comments that I receive that the guys in Svalbard don't receive. If I put on weight, people will talk about it, that kind of thing. Whereas that doesn't really seem to happen for the guys in Svalbard. But this is just my experience of it. But it's so much better than it was 10 years ago, where we'd turn up and play a small festival and I would be sometimes the only woman there.
Yeah.
Like, not just on the bill, including the entire crowd. Now I feel like the representation is way more diverse, which is way more exciting. And then that also paves the way for yet more diversity to continue to grow within metal, which is important.
I think we've reached a point where it's almost at equilibrium. If I walk around Brisbane CBD, I'll see just as many young ladies wearing Mayhem T-shirts or whatever it might be as blokes. Whereas, to your point, even a decade ago, it was just unthinkable. It was really a dude fest. And I've long said, because I've seen it, I'm not saying it's the safest place, but work with me here when I say this, one of the safest spaces, if I'm taking it to an absurd length, for a woman, is in the middle of a mosh pit these days, because I've just seen blokes give them so much space. Might just be an Australian thing, but I was down in Melbourne watching Incantation. There was a lot of ladies in that mosh pit, and mate, they had the run of the place. I can tell you, blokes these days are absolutely terrified of accidentally running into a woman. And I was in a Dream Killers mosh pit at Vinnie's Dive a couple of years back, and the same thing was going on there.
It needs to feel like a safe space for everyone. I mean, we have a song about sexual harassment at shows on our third album. What Was She Wearing? It's called. So it's something that we've spoken about out about as a band quite directly. And that is something I sadly experienced many, many years ago. I went to Wacken in Germany and had a similar experience to what you just described. So, I'd really like to think that obviously I can't speak for everyone's experiences and whatnot, but seeing more women in the pits and seeing more women at shows in general gives me hope that this is a more safe space for everyone now.
Yeah, I was at Mortis, of course, Mortis, and Rev Chris Hades' show on the Gold Coast, Vinnie's Dive, a couple of months back, and there were a lot of ladies in that gig too. Of course, there's no mosh pit at a gig like that, but there was only about 30 or 40 of us. But it would easily have been 2/3 to 1/3, and one of the young ladies is wearing Lord Chaos T-shirt. My good mate Jamie from Demu Borgir, he's an Aussie, and his principal band these days is Lord Chaos, but she was wearing the T-shirt, and I just thought, man, I had to sort of go back to my 1996 self, my 18-year-old, 17-year-old self, and think, as a huge Lord Chaos fan, there's just no way you would have seen a young lady wearing a T-shirt like that back in those days. And I went to some of the shows, and you just saw blokes, but he was this lady repping the T-shirt. So I had a young lady repping the T-shirt, had a great chat with her, and was talking to her about Jamie. And it was just one of those moments where I thought, wow, haven't we? It's not about coming a long way, but haven't things changed? Haven't things changed so much where these are the sort of conversations you can have with someone wearing a Lord Chaos T-shirt these days? It's for everybody. Metal's for everybody, and long may that shall be long. Hopefully, that be the case.
Absolutely.
Is there anything else that you wanted to talk about? Like, are there any other questions that you really wish were asked that aren't brought up in interviews?
That's a difficult question in itself, because I don't think so. Like, I think, we've covered a lot, and I've had the opportunity to to speak about, everything that's going on with Svalbard and stuff at the moment, and how things feel in the wider sense of metals. So yeah, it's all good. Like, I can't think of anything in particular where I'm like, oh, no one's asked me that. Do you know what I mean? So yeah, it's all good.
Oh, that's cool. I like to ask the question of I stopped listening to metal interviews, I've got to say, because I find a lot of them repetitive. And because you go from one to the other and you can hear the same questions being asked, tell me about the album, tell me about the tour, all of this sort of stuff. And I'm sure you go through it and you find very creative ways of answering it from what I've heard, which is great, because you're giving different, you're saying similar things, but you're answering it in a different way. And I think a lot of artists find themselves in that position when you've done hundreds of interviews in a row. But I just like to give you that opportunity in case there's something that you feel needed to be addressed or talked about that I hadn't asked or anybody else asked. So there you go.
If there is, I'll let you know. I'll come back to you.
Remember this chat. We'll do it again in a couple of years' time, or whenever your next tour is or album is anyway.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Thanks very much for your time. Really appreciate it, especially being so late past midnight like it is now over there.
Yeah, it has gone midnight. Definitely ready for bed soon.
Thanks very much. God bless and take care.
Thank you, you too. Bye.
Well, there you have it. As I said in the introduction, that was really informal between myself and Serena Cherry from Svalbard, but an enjoyable chat nonetheless, and I hope you got something out of it. There you go. All right, there are mini chats over at scarsandguitars.com for you to wrap your ears around. Think Morbid Angel, Death, Cannibal Corpse, Carcass, all of the greats of extreme metal are present. So many members, just great musicians with so many fantastic stories to share await. Okay, my name's Andrew Mackay Smith, and I'm the host of the Scars and Guitars podcast. Until the next one, it's a very goodbye for now.